Not to mention, if you come across human bones, you have to do certain things. So that's a very standard sort of mitigation measure. Almost impossible to not have that as an impact if you're digging in the dirt. Same with hazards and hazardous materials. There's always the possibility that there might have been something spilled out there. Even in agricultural areas or places where there's not been much development, there's always the possibility. So we set up mitigation measures to deal with that. For water quality, there's the chance that stormwater runoff might violate current standards, which are getting tighter and tighter all the time. So again, very standard condition that's imposed. For air quality during the construction period, some of the pollutants that would be generated might violate the BAA QMD's standards. And so we have a mitigation in there, about a 10 or 12 part mitigation, which is more than just spray down the dust, but it's a whole variety of different things that can be undertaken. And then in the case of noise, there's the possibility that during construction there would be too much noise as well. So we have a number of mitigation measures which deal with that question. We also looked at 3 different alternatives. The no project alternative, in other words, what happens if things just continue the way they are, which, bear in mind, do involve the use of portable sound systems on occasion. The no sports light alternative and the reduced use alternative. And actually, I would call that the further reduced use alternative, because there was a bit of a shift between the earlier proposed project and the current revised project. So after we held the public meeting on the draft EIR back in June, the comment period closed on June 17th, and we went about responding to all of those comments and creating that mitigation monitoring and reporting program through July and August. We received, or I should say staff and you all received, 11 individual letters from Concord or Walnut Creek residents, virtually all of them either from the Pepper Tree, Greymont Circle area or from the Savannah Circle neighborhood. Received 10 copies of a form letter that was prepared, I believe, by either one person or by a group of people, I think mostly in the Pepper Tree neighborhood, and then signed on to by a number of other residents. There's one letter from a local public agency, that being the City of Concord, and one letter from a state agency, which was the Governor's Office of Planning, basically telling you that there were no state agencies that had comments and that you had undertaken everything you needed to do in terms of the state. And then at the hearing, or the public meeting we had over at the high school, there were 73 verbal comments, which we responded to as well. There were about a half a dozen recurring themes in the response to comments document, which I'm sure that you've seen. One had to do with noise from the operation of the public address system and the cheering crowds during football games or other events. Secondly, views blocked by the sound wall. Third, spillover light and glare from field lights. Fourth, concerns about parking supply versus parking demand. 5, traffic congestion. And then 6, kind of a catch-all category of what I've called petty crime and trash and loitering and antagonizing neighbors' pets and throwing stuff over the fence and not uncommon but regrettable sort of adjacency issues between one land use and another. And then there were a number of other non-environmental comments that were offered, as well as comments that simply were in opposition to the project on its merits, and we didn't respond to very many of those. If you don't mind, I'd like to read this paragraph that I hope will help you when you think about the question of what makes an adequate EIR, because that's the next question you have to deal with. Do you have enough information? Have we done it in a way which gives you as much as you need in order to make your environmental decision? And what the CEQA guidelines, which are the administrative regulations that we use to go about our work, and we have to follow them directly. And they're kind of stilted and mechanistic, but we have to follow them. And they say, with regard to this question of adequacy, an EIR should be prepared with a sufficient degree of analysis to provide decision makers with information which enables them to make a decision, which intelligently takes account of environmental consequences. An evaluation of the environmental effects of a proposed project need not be exhaustive, but the sufficiency of an EIR is to be reviewed in light of what is reasonably feasible. Disagreement among experts does not make an EIR inadequate, but the EIR should summarize the main points of disagreement amongst the experts. And so that's one thing we've tried to do, is to fully fledge and vet the various comments that were made, oftentimes by neighbors in either of the two neighborhoods, so that you at least have the flavor of both what the comment is and what our either technical or sometimes less technical response might be. And then just to emphasize at the bottom, what the guidelines say is that the courts have looked not for perfection, but for adequacy, completeness, and a good faith effort at full disclosure. And so our hope is that in those two documents, the two main documents that you have, that you find that that's the case, that it's been fully disclosed. If there's other analysis or information that you need in order to fully convince yourselves that you have all the environmental information you need, then you can tell staff or tell us that, and we can go back and scurry around and do some sort of pointed or specific analysis that you think would benefit your decision-making process. So that is our presentation.
Thank you. Are there any board questions at this time or discussion? This would be your chance. Mr. Lawrence, you were leaning forward, and Mrs. Mayo and Mrs. Oaks, I'll probably all have questions, so I'll just kind of recognize you. Go right ahead.
Address the particulars, or what is this the appropriate time?
Address the particulars of the report. Mr. Cody is back there, and he and I sort of talked about this the other day, but not fully. So we did talk about giving the board some time to reflect and review the report. And then did you have something you wanted to present at some time, or are you just here now to answer questions?
We're here to answer any technical questions you may have tonight.
Okay, because the plan is we review, we take the public comments, we take the report, we listen to what, all parties have to say, and then we come back on August 28th with a decision of the board on how to proceed.
That's correct.
So this is our chance right now, because we don't get a chance as a board, otherwise we can't just wander around talking and meeting with each other. So this is our single chance to get our questions answered. And as I say, not all board members, probably have even had a part in this. For some, it comes brand new. And even to me, I've been on the board 2 years. I didn't get a lot of this information the first 2 years I was on the board. I didn't go to any of it, get real clear invitations. So I'm catching up as well. So we're all trying to read, understand the community, and make the best decision possible. So this is our chance to catch up and pick brains. I feel it's a first time we've really done something more comprehensive with the board. So questions? Ms. Mayo, did you have a question, or Mrs. Oaks?
I didn't have any technical questions. I did have a question around the comment that the school district would be making revenue off the outside users. It's been my understanding that typically we're fortunate if we break even with outside users. Can you explain my misunderstanding?
I would be happy to attempt to explain. Obviously, I don't run that particular department. Jeff McDaniel may have better data on what we're currently receiving from the use of our fields, but you are correct. Usually especially on a natural field, it does not compensate us over the time for the rehabilitation that's required on a yearly basis. With the synthetic fields, I don't know exactly what we're getting for those, but if we have a 10-year life, the more we use these fields, the more we have to rake them and sweep them and clean those up. Usually we do, on a larger event, are able to recoup a custodial cost to cover that event.
Right. And is it a requirement of us to allow the facilities to be used for the public, or can we prohibit the public from using them?
I believe by law, and Ms. Williams may be able to assist in this, by law we are required to allow public access during non-school hours to any group that provides us with valid insurance and follows the limitations that the school may have. Usually the special use permits are first approved by the local administration, and they may have certain restrictions that they have. You can't use this particular facility, or we don't want you, or we want you out here at a certain time. But